This is not a Jacob & Co. Astronomia. In fact, it's a much more affordable homage of the original, coming in at about $700. Today, we're looking at this from Geya. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Chase, and this is All Things Random, mostly watch reviews with some random stuff sprinkled in between. I am mostly an affordable watch channel, so whenever they reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to look at this Jacob & Co. homage? I said, sure, but I'm going to give my honest opinions on it. Now, right off the bat, this thing is not my cup of tea. But if it's your cup of tea and you are broke like most of us and can't afford a $500,000 watch, perhaps you are interested in this. So details first, then my opinion at the very end. This is the Geya Fly into Space. Clearly this is a Jacob & Co. homage, like I already mentioned, from the Astronomia. Now this is going to be very hard to film simply because you see that massively curved domed piece of glass all the way around. Now, as beautiful as this is and as cool as this is, it's pretty hard to film in a lit studio, so I kind of had to do like a ring light here so I can try to kind of get rid of some of the glare. And well, it was just pretty hard, so I'll insert some macro photography while I'm going through this entire review. Now again, this is clearly an homage to a much more expensive watch. Now Geya here had to cut corners in some places, and I'll show you, but generally speaking, for $700, they did a lot with $700. That is actually pretty amazing. So we're going to talk about the pros and the cons of this watch. Now this watch comes in at 46 millimeters in diameter. It is not a small watch, and look at how tall this thing is. It's almost as tall as it is wide in diameter. It has a lug width of 22 millimeters, and this thing does have a cowhide leather embossed leather strap that comes down to a nice deployant clasp. You'll see these on much more expensive watches. It's nice that they use this on, well, we leave it open, on this watch. On the back, you can see that it has an engraved case back, if I can get that in focus. This right here is how you actually wind it. This flops out. You wind it right here. There's a little button here. I'll show you in just a few minutes on how to actually set the time. Now, the case itself is made of 316L stainless steel. Clearly, it's PVD coated. This is not actual rose gold for this price point. PVD coated. 316L stainless steel, the industrial standard, and it does have, sadly, not sapphire, but just glass around the entire thing. But it does have a really nice sort of terrarium look, because this is a space watch. This is a terrarium for space on your wrist. They use, in an attempt to cut cost, on the back side of the watch, on the back side of the dial, you can see right there, the shimmering flash of the baguette, not diamonds. These are cubic zirconians, of course, at a price point of $700. You'd expect that. Now, let's talk about how they made this watch work. Well, first, inside, you have a tourbillon at the 12 o'clock. You have some sort of crystal thing at the 3 o'clock. You have a rotating or revolving globe here at the 6 o'clock. Then you have the dial itself here at the 9 o'clock position. This is a true tourbillon. This tourbillon manual wind movement functions down on a time train down to this globe right here. This right here is a quartz movement. That's how they were able to make this thing work. They made it work because they have used two separate types of movement. They used a manual wind movement right here with the tourbillon, then they used a quartz movement right here. That's pretty much the only way they could have done this at this price point. So they were very clever in creating this watch. Now, normally in the Jacob & Co. Astronomia, this entire thing slowly rotates around the dial. So the tourbillon, the dial, everything slowly rotates as it turns every hour. This does not rotate. Everything is fixed and stationary. So, you know, it's one of those, they had to cut that ability for this homage watch because, again, only $700. Now, far away, everything looks actually pretty amazing. Close up, you can see where they've kind of cut some costs. Like if you look between the baguettes aren't perfectly aligned, and you can see there are some gaps. When it comes to this kind of crystal here at the 3 o'clock position, it's not the best looking crystal gem, and it kind of looks like a plastic bead you'd find at a dollar market. The 6 o'clock position here, the globe, though it turns in sort of a jittery way. Now, if it is attached to the manual wind movement right here, this should spin just as smoothly as the tourbillon up here at the 12 o'clock position, but it's jittery and it bounces back and forth, and this is quite distracting. Then the dial over here, which is done actually quite nicely, even up close. Yeah, there's some issues with maybe the finishing on the hands, but generally speaking, it's actually done quite nicely compared to the overall finish of the watch. The high polished nature of the PVD coating is done to a pretty good standard. The buckle is matching. However, this is not a high polished buckle. This is a brushed buckle. It says Geya on there. The strap is a padded cowhide, which feels pretty good. And there's basically no loom on this watch, which is fine. So let's go ahead and toss it on my 7 1/4 inch wrist, and you can see what I mean by maybe this is your thing or not my thing. Now on my 7 1/4 inch wrist, this thing fits, again, very large on the wrist. The terrarium of the curved glass sits pretty high, but that's what this watch originally was designed to do. It was designed to catch eyes and bring your attention down to the wrist and say, hey, what is this very expensive thing on the wrist? Now, to set this watch is actually quite easy. On the back side, you can see there is a small button right here. You would take a screwdriver or something applied, and then you would press down on this and hold it. I'll show you right here. And then it sets the time. Other than that, you use this little thing right here and you wind it, and that's what causes the tourbillon to spin. Now let's wrap up this with some pros and cons. So clearly they've had to cut corners with this watch. It has stainless steel, PVD coated casing. It uses glass instead of sapphire, and they had to use kind of a balance between a hand-wound tourbillon movement that's broken down in a train that allows a globe to rotate at the bottom, and then you have the quartz movement for the timekeeping. They were very clever in creating this watch. I will say that right off the bat. They were very clever in creating this watch. That being said, there are some glaring mistakes that could have been remedied maybe other ways. One is the globe at the bottom at the 6 o'clock position. I think the pure fact that it has kind of a glitchy rotation is very off-putting to me. I think the crystal used at the 3 o'clock position looks like a cheap plastic crystal, like a bead that you'd find at a bead store. Not a big fan of that either. I could be completely wrong. I'm just telling you what it looks like. I do like the tourbillon at the 12 o'clock. I think they did a good job there. I like the fact that you can hand wind it on the back. And I also like the fact that setting the time for the quartz movement is not very difficult. Now, overall, this thing is not for me. It's not for me. It's big, it's bold, it's on your wrist. It reminds me of the Aventi watches I have, except the Aventi watches I have are not trying to replicate anything else. This is a direct homage of the Jacob & Co. So if you wear it on your wrist, someone's going to think, oh, it's a Jacob & Co. And then you're going to have to explain that, no, it's not a Jacob & Co. It is a much more affordable homage of the watch brand. And sometimes those can be very odd conversations to have. They could be quite awkward. Anyway, if you're interested in this, I will leave a link down below to their website. I have a lot of watches coming out in the future. If you guys are ever interested in any watches that I've reviewed that I don't feel like keeping, I will often sell them at a heavy discount. Look in the link down below. Watches for sale that I reviewed, I just toss them up on eBay for a heavy discount. Like if I review a Militado watch and that watch comes in at $130, I'll normally sell it for like $60, brand new basically, other than me wearing it for the review. Anyway, if you're still here, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. Hit the notification bell. And I have a lot of videos coming out in the future, and I'll see you in the next one.